Welcome. Another episode, Dr. James Beckett, Sports Card Insights, here with Eric Norton. We're going to talk about a special what-if scenario. What if Len Bias? Well, we'll unpack that. First, thanks to sponsors, Beckett Media, Beckett Grading, Beckett Authentication, ComC.com, Burbank Sports Cards, Mike Stadium Sports Cards, Heritage Auctions, Huggins and Scott Auctions, Topps, Panini, and Upper Deck. We're going to look at the what if, and Eric and I are going to bat it around of what would have happened if Len Bias had not passed away a couple days after the draft.
Yeah,
he was the number two.
Right. It might have been like 38 hours after the draft. It wasn't long.
It was a day or two afterwards. Why did you consider this, Eric? Because, I mean, this is your idea, but it resonated well with me. I'm older than you. I remember that probably in a different way than you remember it. It seemed senseless, but what's your take on it?
So I was recently watching the 30 for 30 without bias, and it just got me to thinking, if he was everything that he was advertised to be, I mean, he would have been, I'll tell you.
You can't say he would be the next Michael Jordan
right.
with a straight face, even though he was pretty awesome.
Right.
And you can't predict an amazing career with whatever, 6 world championships and all that stuff.
I heard somebody say recently that Kevin Durant is everything Len Bias would have been.
Oh.
And
that's pretty strong.
And that made me like, it really piqued my interest. And we all love the 86, 87 Flair basketball set. So I was just thinking, if he would have ended up in the 87, 88 set, how would that set be remembered if he had the
He would have been in that. I mean, because he was drafted number 2 after Brad Daugherty. So Daugherty's in there. And Daugherty had a decent career and has kind of stayed in the public eye, sharp guy. But his cards have never gotten great respect. But he was the number 1 pick, and Len Bias was number 2. Right.
And then that set is full of who's who right now. I mean,
it's a decent set, but so I'm just saying, what are the rookie from that draft class? You know, the most comparable person would be Brad Daugherty.
Yeah, Brad Daugherty, which is he's doing NASCAR now,
and he's doing NASCAR. But I mean, like I said, he had a decent career.
Yeah,
you look at his numbers. Len Bias was a hoss. I mean, he had a lot of points, a lot of rebounds, and a tough competitor.
Right.
Bigger than Michael Jordan.
Yes.
Bigger.
Well, Jordan's 6'6", right? And Bias was 6'8".
Yeah, and so a little bigger, and so more of a kind of in between. He probably would have been power forward, at that point. But and now he
was he Jordan. He wasn't.
Jordan's more of a guard.
Yeah, but Jordan had kind of a wider body, more muscular. I remember
toward the end, at the beginning, you go back to his college days. He was a 2 guard.
Okay.
But he was big for that, and then toward he bulked up in his Wizard days for sure.
Sure, Bias was, I don't want to say he was lanky, but he was
taller and he was. I mean, people were just drooling.
Sure.
I mean, this was going to turn around. He was the next great hope for the Celtics, and then horrible news. So what would that, if he had not passed away, if none of that had happened, he would have been probably a star for the next 15 years. Right. I mean, if you track with, could he have been, the other comp would be, Brad Daugherty, but then who was picked before him based on the theory of taller guys, or all things being equal, to pick the taller guy. But Scottie Pippen comes in the next year, so that instead of being another Jordan, when you look at, and Scottie Pippen's cards are very popular. And he was maybe a better defender, perhaps, than Len Bias, but
that's what he was
all-around player.
Yeah, he was
Scottie was all-around player. He could score, he could rebound, he could assist, and he could defend. Mm-hmm. Even though he probably could do none of those things as well as Michael Jordan,
right?
Which is kind of amazing. But a great Robin to Michael Jordan's Batman.
Absolutely.
So Len Bias could have been in the Celtics organization along with Larry Bird.
Right.
Larry Bird would have been the finesse, and Bias would have been the flash, maybe. I don't know.
I wonder how Bird's tutelage would have helped him in his career.
Well, given how he died, I'm not sure about that. Right. But on the other hand, Larry Bird was one of the smartest players that didn't do it by quickness, did it by anticipation and all that. But those two guys being together would have been pretty scary.
That would have been the tail end of McHale and Parrish as well. So, I mean, there's a lot of knowledge there to learn, NBA knowledge.
But they still could. If the Len Bias, that all cylinders going, everything, and listening to Larry Bird and all that stuff, They could have won a bunch of championships in the late 80s.
I think so. That Bulls team would have been different, obviously, because going into the 90s, that Bulls team was everything. But in the late 80s, they hadn't quite blossomed.
Gel, yeah.
Detroit.
In fact, that was a knock on Jordan.
Right.
Early on, if you're so great, how you're winning scoring titles, but you're not winning championships.
That Detroit franchise would have been different, a lot different. Len Bias,
well, and they were out muscling their opponents a lot of times, and I think Len Bias probably didn't take any guff from anybody.
I don't think so either.
So they could try to muscle him all they want. I think he'd be they'd bounce off. I don't know.
Do you remember if he was a good shooter?
A good shooter.
Yeah.
But I mean, there wasn't a 3-point kind of a situation then, so he wasn't out to 25 feet. But the goal was to get the mid-rangers, and the short mid-rangers were you were trying to attack the basket and get closer in. I think so.
Was that the ACC?
He's a good shooter.
Was that the ACC or the Big East?
ACC.
Okay, so that was Duke and North Carolina, and that he was playing against.
No, but that was the league at that point.
Yeah,
I mean, it was for long, but it was very regional then. It hadn't spread out.
Right.
And Maryland had good teams. They had really good teams, but it was hard to break through with, North Carolina and Duke.
Right. Absolutely.
And some of the others. So, I don't, I have another name that probably nobody's going to remember, but I'm old enough but Maurice Stokes.
Okay.
Who is a 57, 58 tops rookie card, who was kind of a similar player to Len Bias, and was similarly struck down early, not as early, but he basically he fell on his head, but he was like averaging 20 rebounds, 20 points and 20 rebounds back in the late 50s for what was then the Cincinnati Royals. But so he got a concussion, and then he had some other health problem. Then he wound up being like a quadriplegic.
Oh wow!
And so they did charity games for him. But again, just looking at his type of game, he was a relentless rebounder and a scorer. And Len Bias, I think, was like that too.
Yeah.
So, but since he died in his prime, and he'd only had a couple of years of this, his card back in the 70s when I was starting to collect still had a following.
Oh.
Now, not so much because he's passed away.
Passed away since then.
But he was considered a star, even though he only played 2.5 years or something at a very, very high level.
Right. Was that the ABA or was that?
No, that was NBA. That was NBA. That was in the
Kansas City Royals.
But
are you aware of maybe like a Maryland team set that has a Bias card in it or anything like that?
Oh, Maryland? Does he have a college card?
Yeah, does he?
I'd have to look that up. I'm not sure. If he does, I do. Probably because I'm pretty much exhaustively. So I'm guessing no.
Okay.
I'm guessing no. I mean, contemporaneous with his playing.
Sure.
Sometimes he'll do all-time great things, but
right.
I don't recall that.
Are you aware of any company that has posthumously released a autograph or honored him?
I don't think so. Like talk about a tough autograph.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, that was, again, it predates. I mean, there was still a lot of autograph collecting in those days, but not so much basketball on cards. So, well, you couldn't even have it be on a card.
Right.
So
that'd be sounds like something like the bar or something.
Did it? I don't know if it got into it because I didn't see the 30 on 30 thing, but the Celtics never got compensation. I don't think.
That I can recall.
So it's supposedly their fault for not fully vetting the fact that they drafted a guy who had potentially a problem.
Yeah.
And nobody knew it. You see, we were talking about how men, need to not so much bare their soul and share their feelings to the deepest level, but if you hold too much in, then it gets lonely out there. And if you're a superstar, it can even be more lonely because he presumably had to keep a secret that he had an addiction.
Now, was that the case though? Or was this not like I thought it was just like a one-time thing where he tried it.
Yeah, I'm unwilling to be positive that's the case. Sure. Maybe that's the case. I don't know. It's just that would be unwise one time.
Right.
Yeah.
But then again, I mean, me being me,
you're going to give the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt. It's just that it just seems like it's not a good way to celebrate.
Not at all.
That you're
not at all.
Payday. That some things are illegal for a good reason.
Then of course, not to get too far off track, but the Celtics had another player die.
Reggie Lewis.
Yeah, Reggie Lewis. So, a Len Bias Reggie Lewis team.
I'm telling you, but they're both really good. I mean, telling you, they would have been a dynasty kind of aspect. But and the other thing that's interesting that collectors may not well, just to put it in perspective, players stayed with their franchise for a lot longer in those days. So nowadays, you know, when your rookie contract's up, you could opt out or do these different things. But back in those days, once the Celtics had you, they weren't going to let you go as long as you were producing.
Right.
And so there really could be these aspects of dynasty that you don't see as much now. It's like you lamented about your Mariners. If the all-time great Mariners team, or if the all-time, you get to pick whoever was a Mariner ever, or whoever came up through the Mariners, they should have won everything from the mid-'90s on.
Sure.
If they just kept their nucleus.
Kept their nucleus together.
But they got outspent, perhaps. I don't know.
Well, I don't want to talk about the Mariners too much, but they almost moved to Anaheim at one point. So, yeah, they weren't doing well there. But I did want to ask you though, like, if Len Bias was in that set, do you think it would be as popular as the 86, 87?
Well, he wouldn't be in the 86, 87 unless he left early.
Right, but so he would have been 87, 88.
He would have been 87. Well, he would have been. He was tracking exactly with Brad Daugherty because Brad Daugherty was the number 1 pick. He was the number 2 pick, and so he would have been in that set, and that would have taken that set to another level probably. If he was because you know he was. I think he was reasonably unselfish. He wasn't a ball hog because he worked hard for rebounds and all that stuff. So my sense is he would have been a good team player. So Len Bias would have been a member of the Celtics for a long time. He would have fit into the Celtics' famous, vaunted team system where the team success is more important than individual success. But he would have been a double-double machine. He would have been 20 and 10 every night. And, you know, again, without a lot of three-pointer kind of stuff, guys like that were really were really valuable. He would have brought some additional athleticism to the Celtics.
Right. Which they lacked.
Which they maybe lacked a little bit, but they had, makes me sad. Makes me sad. I mean, we don't live in a perfect world. We live in a fallen world, and people make mistakes, and there's consequences and all that stuff. But it's a beautiful thing to see a guy that's worked his whole life to be really good at something. And then that's one of the reasons we like sports and cards, is because then they get out there and you get to see them doing something they love to do. And, but there's different ways that can be derailed. It could be an injury. It could be a poor personal choice. Like I said, whether it's one time or a pattern, it's the other thing I like to say, and I'll probably try to end this bring this into a team aspect, is that I think that it's important kind of who you hang out with.
Yeah.
So I don't know about you, but I've had some really good friends in my life that if I ever did think about getting off the rails, they would have encouraged me to stay within the rails. And so when boys or men or young men or old men are going through life, you know, if you've got people in your life that say, hey, don't do that.
Right.
That's not going to work out for you. And it can't be a stranger. It needs to be somebody close enough to you.
Right.
I'm not saying that's what the Celtics had, but all these dynasties have to have that, of a bunch of guys getting together and trying to work out how they can be better as a whole than they are as parts. And then and being sensitive and helping each other. And not encourage them to do dumb stuff or looking the other way. And I think modern sports is not as much like that now. But so the people that Len Bias was hanging out with, they should have had his back.
Yeah, they should have.
They should have said, "Dude, we're not letting you do that."
Right. I agree.
And sad story. This is not a tribute to Len Bias, but it's probably a tribute of some sense of a guy that was snuffed out too early, but could have been an amazing contributor to highlight reels and future championships. So, Eric, any last comments about Len Bias? I mean, I think you've thought about this in a way that, like we were saying, it basically, in one sense, it could happen to anybody, that no one's guaranteed a long, happy life, but to have great success for 20, 21, 22 years and then be gone, that's sad. But he had,
a couple comments if I got time.
Sure.
I felt robbed. Like, you know,
after you saw it?
Yeah. At that time of my life, I was just coming into sports and really enjoying things. And, I felt robbed that I never got to see him play in the NBA level. Yeah. And Len Bias almost single-handedly propelled the DARE program into existence.
Well, that's a positive result from that.
Yeah. And I remember the day after, he passed, us being in the gym at school for a school assembly and talking about the dangers of drug use and why we want to stay away from that. So at a young age, that was a
scared straight kind of thing.
Yeah, kind of.
This could happen even to somebody that's in peak physical condition, absolutely peak physical condition. In fact, let me end on this: is that sometimes in high school, like when LeBron James was there, he's like a man playing against boys.
Right.
And you wonder, how's this man going to do when he gets to play against other men? But Len Bias was like a man playing against boys even in college.
Right.
Okay. How he would have done in the pros, my guess he would have done great.
I think so too.
So, thanks, Eric, for this melancholy ride. And we'll be back again tomorrow with another, perhaps more uplifting episode. Thanks.
The man in the house of cards. The man in the house of cards. The man in the house of cards is doing